Yeah, I think, okay. Good morning, everyone. This morning for Sunday school, we will be focusing on one of the qualities of as part of the training in godliness, right? One of the fruit of the Spirit, right? So when you hear the word, the word is obviously the word of the day is, right? We always have this, when we were in school, right? We'd have like a morning assembly kind of thing, and so they would say, okay, the topic of the day is, and then a student would come up and they would speak few lines on that topic, right? So just for information, for something for the kids to learn early morning, right? For us, we are all God's kids, and we are here to learn, right? That's the idea, that we are here to learn. So the word of the day is gentleness, right? So when you hear the word gentleness, what does come to your mind? Now, we always talk about, be gentle, be kind, be this, be that, it's part of our vocabulary, right? So what does come to your mind when you hear word gentleness? Okay, opposite of abrasive, okay?
I saw this poster, and it showed this really buff guy with huge muscles and all flexed up and cradling a newborn baby in his arms. And it was marked gentleness.
There's an example of it right there.
Yeah.
I think it's how you talk to someone. When you speak with gentleness, there's a kindness and a caring of how they feel.
Okay.
Because of COVID, people will walk by you and not look at you and smile. It's like a gentle touch to each other when you say good morning and smile and walk by a close stranger. There's just something warm about that.
So, anyone else? So we saw different meanings, right? It all kind of points to gentleness, right? Gentleness doesn't mean like you're just completely shy, right? You're being quiet, or that's not the definition in the Bible, okay? Gentlemen, just not saying anything, or just being quiet, not being I'm just being, not harmful. So it's like a boat on a on the side of the lake. It's just sitting there, right? It's not doing it. It's gentle, right? It's like calm, right? But what's the purpose of that boat if it's not in the waters, right? So the gentleness does not mean just being shy and quiet. Actually, from the Bible, the definition of gentleness is gentleness of spirit. Like you said, when COVID, right? People are not even smiling. There is that comfort. So there is no feeling of the opposite person should feel the comfort, right, from you, right, either through your senses, how you look at them, how you talk to them, or your body, right, your body language. There has to be some response, right? What kind of response are they getting, right? Then meekness, actually. So right now, as he was talking, that bodybuilder holding the baby, right? So it's like meekness to gentleness. So that's strength under control, right? So Jesus had his strength under control every time, right? Remember, he's talked about he could command the angels and wipe things out. But at all points, right, Jesus had his strength under control, right? We all have strengths, right? How we express that strength, right? Is it under control or not? It's part of gentleness, right? And then obviously it's a quality of character that reflects humility, patience, and kindness, right? You are expressing something, right, that makes the other person so comfortable, right? It's like a gravitational force, right? It's like, so basically it doesn't matter how high you throw a rock up in the air, it will always come down because that gravity always exists, right? So doesn't matter how the opposite person is, right? Doesn't matter whether good, bad, this or that, it doesn't matter. But if you have this quality of gentleness, it's like gravity, right? Eventually, it doesn't matter how far they go, right? They will come back to you, right? Because you have this quality, right? So, if you guys read it's lesson 10 in the booklet, right? And the next 3 pages, they have there's a lot of questions. So what I've done is actually I have combined and I split into pieces, so we can actually go just go one by one. So the first thing I want to talk about is actually situation and response. Why did I write that, right? So a lot of times, right, our response, right? So gentleness is kind of a response, right? You're responding to someone, right? It's just not within yourself, right? You are actually, you gotta be gentle to yourself too. No, that's not, but mostly it's an outward expression, right? You are responding to someone, right? And that response depends on the situation, right? Basically your situation and the opposite person's situation, right? Because without understanding, right, if you fail to recognize your situation, like a lot of things might be going on in your own life, right? You're under stress or health issues or financial, right? The opposite person also, right, might be going through many different things. So they might not respond well. So it's very important that you understand your own situation, you understand other person's situation, right? So the question is, how do we better understand our own situation and other person's situation so we can respond well, right? If you don't have that background, you can't respond well. You will be reactive. You're not really responding, you're reacting to things. So how can we understand each other's situation better? That's part of gentleness, right? You are taking the time to understand someone, right? That's the gentleness of spirit. You're giving the opportunity to other people to see where they are. Because Jesus said, if somebody asks you to walk for a mile, go an extra mile, right? So how do we understand each other's situation? How can we?
I think part of it would be the ability, if you're talking about understanding another person's situation in relationship to yours, I think relationship is the key. You have to have some knowledge of who that individual is, and they have to have some knowledge of who you are in order for the gentleness to have relevance, or to have, I don't know, relevance might not be the right word, but to be understood perhaps. What I would do in gentleness to you based on our relationship might look completely different to my wife based on our relationship. Gentleness to her and gentleness to you mean two different things. I have to be aware of each of those circumstances in order for me to be able to demonstrate gentleness and for you to understand it appropriately. So relationship is necessary.
So basically you need to invest time, right? You need to invest time in each other's lives. Then you will respond well, right? Otherwise, if you can't understand, it's like, for example, so last week, so I'm a programmer, I do software programming, right? So last week my manager said, okay, go attend this, meeting, right? It's a new technology I've never worked with, right? And just take it over. And we were telling our manager, I heard that technology word for the first time. I never even Googled it. And you expect us to take it and start working on it. I'm like, we need time to understand the language, right? We need to understand what a command means, right? One of those in that code. I can't just go and start programming that thing. The same way with the people too. You have to take time to invest, understand, right? Without that, you can't really do it. You will make mistakes. That's the thing. And sometimes mistakes can be costly. It just depends on the situation. So let's look at a couple of verses, which I want to look actually from the book. That if you read 1 Kings chapter 18 and 19, I want to pick a couple of verses. Let's see, 18 verse 38. It says that we know here, Elijah wanted to meet Ahab, and then he challenged the prophets of Baal, and then, see who is powerful. So it says, when all the people saw, verse 38, then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. Right? So they purposely made it more wet and wet, right? Elijah, right? So, and then God completely, right? He evaporated, it just consumed everything, right? God showed his power there, right? So, something for the people to recognize, right, who God is, right? And then in verse, if you read Matthew chapter 11, verse 22 to 24, here Jesus is he's not happy with these cities, right? All the cities he's mentioning there, he's like, woe to you, right? Do you think Jesus and God were gentle here? What do you think?
Well, gentle, yeah, he didn't just
Yeah. Yeah.
restrain.
Yeah.
Restraint under control.
Yep. Right? Even though God had so much, God was not happy, right? Jesus was not happy, right? But they didn't act on impulse, right? They didn't just act on impulse. Like, okay, you guys are doing bad, you're not listening, let's just clean you out. Right? So part of gentleness is you do not act on impulse, right? You have to, so here, God only burned that offering. There, Jesus, kind of scolded them in a way, right? But there's, like I said, it's strength under control to actually bring people's attention, right? To remember Abraham's prayer. If there are 500 good people, ultimately comes to 5 people, will you destroy? Right? God said, even if there is few left, I will spare, right? So God is looking, right, for those people who have that goodness, right? Those qualities. That gentleness is just one of those qualities, right? He's looking. Imagine, right? You can stop God's wrath just by being good. Isn't that wonderful? Right? You have that power. So, did God gave us power? Some power, right? We have some power, right? That we can have influence. So, right? So, that is something we have to realize, that we have influence, right? And gentleness is one of the good things that you can influence, right?
Something that Jesus always did was he was gentle with people of the world, always.
Yeah.
Always. Who he went after was people that should know better.
Yeah.
The Pharisees, the Chorazin people, because they saw the miracles of God, they saw the wonders of God. So, that's what I think. But in that same context, we are gentle with other Christians in our correction. If we ever, say, hey, brother, wasn't that a bit rough how you talked to that guy? Could you have done that a little more gently? There's stuff like that, and we need to take that and go, maybe I could have. But Jesus always, he wasn't always gentle with
Yeah.
Christian faith.
But Jesus was honest, right? He told as it is, right? Because here we are so we have to recognize whom we are dealing with, right? Under whom presence are we in? We're under God's presence, right? So we have to be honest with each other. We can't. Gentleness doesn't mean, oh, it's okay, right? Being soft and comfy. No. The goal is that how do we edify each other, right? Right? How do we edify each other? The idea is that how you grow up together, how do you mature together, right? If you go to the next verses that are there, for example, 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 11 to 13, right? here, interesting verses. So let's read that. It says, he said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and powerful wind was tearing up the mountains and breaking the rocks in pieces and before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a sound of gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood and entered into the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? So we know God, all the fire, earthquake, we know that when those things happen in the Old Testament, right, God is he's saying something, he's demanding his attention. But here, it's just a wind, right? And then Elijah had to listen to it, right? So in the previous chapter, God demonstrated his power, right? He burned, right? Here, see how God is acting, right? See, right? Depending upon the situation, right? So that's why situation and how he's responding, right? Depending upon the situation. So that's the key, right? How can we respond better? Now, we understood the situation, like somebody, okay, we understood what they're going through, what you understand your own situation, which situation are you in, but how can we respond better to someone? What are ways we can respond well?
Well, I know one thing that's come up recently is people say, oh, God would never send anybody to hell. And people go, what do you say to that? And I recently heard, no, he doesn't. He honors your choice. It's your choice. You can choose heaven or you can choose hell. You can choose to follow me or you can choose not to follow. So he'll honor your choice. And I'll tell you, when you say that, people are like, they're quite shocked. But it's a gentle way to get the point across. So I think Jesus was constantly giving creative little ways of saying, like the woman thrown at his feet.
Uh-huh.
He didn't say, well, where's the guy who was doing the evil with her, He didn't say that. The river throws the first rock. There she is. So he was very clever, and sometimes we have to think, what is a way that Jesus could have answered, or how would, there's just some really clever ways, and Jesus was so brilliant in his answers.
And
Maybe some of the way, the best way to respond initially is to be able to listen. That is a rare attribute in our world today, is having somebody who will just be quiet and listen to you versus offering everything up at first blush, at first contact, regurgitating everything that you think you should be hearing versus actually listening to you and then understanding better what the problem might be.
and just like here, how Elijah's, right? In the first time, God demonstrated his power, so it was visual, right? Visual, how God responded, so that has an impact, right? The second time, was like he was running away, right? And he was hiding, and God just did not, but he listened, right? So depending on the situation, right? So God has given all these, he has given us senses, right? Your hands, ability to speak, right? Listen. So how do we use that? That's the key, right? Learning to how to speak, right? How to listen, right? How to respond with your body language, right? That helps us to respond well, right? But that involves some kind of training, right? So if you are in the army, right, you get trained. Why?
In order to be able to perform what the mission is.
Yeah. Depending on the situation, you need to be able to respond, right? Quick, right? There you can sit and think, okay, in this manual, chapter number 17, if this was the situation, I gotta respond this. You don't. You don't have that luxury in a war, right? They train you so that your subconscious kicks in. Like just example, say driving a car, right? if suddenly somebody cuts you off, you put your brake instantly. You know, because your body has trained, your mind has trained, even though completely not aware, but you do it, right? But that takes time, practice, learning. Same thing, right? Here, if you have to respond well, you have to train yourself. That demands training. Let's.
You know what, that's a brilliant moment. We're trained,
Yeah.
we have that.
So that's why we'll jump to the next piece, right? So that part of the training, right? So if let's read that verse actually, then we'll see Matthew chapter 11, verse. It says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your soul, for my yoke is comfortable and my burden is light." Imagine if you have that background, right? Right? Like we talked about training, right? How you respond, right? You have to recognize your own situation. But if this is your situation, right? If this is how you're learning, right? If this is your background, if this is your foundation, right? Imagine how you will respond, right? It brings you peace, it brings you strength, it brings you joy, right? Having Christ in your life, right? Learning from Him, right? Learning from His life. So when you have that ready, right? When you have that in your life, right? So then automatically, right? That's your training, right? That's your manual. You know what to do, right? It says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." That is the key, right? "For I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul," right? So Jesus is seeking us, right? He's seeking us. He wants us to be close to Him. So keeping that in mind, right? If you have that blessing, right? If that you are rested in the Lord, right? Rested in Jesus, how do you think you will be able to respond well to a situation? Keeping that in back of your mind, right? Okay, I have Jesus in my subconscious, right? So how will I respond now, right? Imagine a situation in your life, right? If people are willing to share, right? Having Jesus back of your mind, if there was a situation where you think, I could have either, let's go both ways, like I have responded to the situation well, right? And there was a situation where I didn't respond well, but I could have responded better. Does anyone have any examples? If somebody made you angry, somebody almost hit you in the parking lot, any situation where you think,
Proverbs 15:1. You soft answer turns away wrath. The other way is, the Holy Spirit will bring to mind what you need to say. Don't worry about what you need to say. And the only way you can have that is you know the word.
yeah,
All the things that are coming to my mind are bad responses that I'm too ashamed to talk about publicly. But when I have that reaction, when somebody, and I have that knee-jerk reaction, as I get older and wiser, the guilt is quicker to come. Like, ooh, I should not have said that. I should not have reacted that way. And trying to learn the
but like we all want to respond well, right, to our family or kids or any of your co-workers, right? It's important, right? So having the right foundation is essential, right? Because if you have nothing to go back, right? If you have no role model, right? A lot of times we struggle. A lot of times we are in this situation. Okay, I don't know what to do, right? There's so many situations in life, right? We don't know what to do, but if we have a role model like Jesus, or even people in the church, or older people, or anyone, right? But if we can learn, right, we'll respond better. Like, so I don't respond well under stress sometimes, right? To kids, or like I get, when there's, everybody has stress in their lives, right? That's one of the triggers for a lot of people, that we don't have time to think and we just react to situation, right? But imagine, right, if you are gentle, so gentleness is a response, right? If you could respond well, right, to situation, how much wonderful will it be, right? That's what Jesus is trying here, right? That he says, I am humble, right? I'm humble, right? I'm gentle and I'm humble, right? So imagine that if the other person gets the same feeling from you, imagine the impact that you can have, right, on that person. So when we are settled, right, when we are when we are at peace, right, we will respond well. Right? If we are completely unsettled in our lives, right, then we're not going to respond well, right? So we have to go back to the source, right? Okay, where is my strength comes from? Where is my joy comes from, right? And then practice, right? You have to practice, right? Because see, because gentleness is, they say, fruit of the spirit, right? Right? If a plant has to produce a fruit, it has to work on it, right? You have to make it work. Otherwise, the fruit won't show up, right? So that's how, right? For us to actually be able to be gentle, we have to work towards it, right? Okay, we have the source, we have the material, but then the question is, the next thing is learning. So let's read Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1 to 6. So it says, therefore, I, prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, being diligent to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were also called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Recognizing this is very important, right? For example, like we talked about, when you recognize somebody's situation, what they're in, you will respond well. So, as Christians, we need to realize that it's one body, one Spirit, one God. It's all one, right? We're all together in this, right? You are not separate from me, right? We're all brothers and sisters in Christ, right? So imagine, so you have family, you have non-family members, right? So you have your own brothers and sisters and other people, right? How is your response, right, compared to a family member, compared to an outsider? If you're in the same, if you're in the same, for example, if your brother got angry at you for something, and somebody else got angry at you for the same thing, for example, a financial thing, right? How would your response would be? Because you love your brother, but you really don't know this person, the outsider, but both kind of have wronged you, say, financially. What would your response would be?
You would care more what, for me, I would take to heart what my blood family said more than my water family. They always say blood.
Yeah.
It would mean more to me.
But why?
Because we're in a relationship and I trust that person, what they say.
So, and because you respond differently, because you know you love your brother or your sister, right? Your family, right? And you know you're part of the family, you're all together. So you respond differently compared to an outsider. Same thing here. Recognizing within the church, we're all part of the family, right? I'm not different than you, or, even there are differences, obviously, but in terms of understanding that, right, we're all together. If we have that thing in mind, right, no matter who it is, like whoever is sitting on these chairs, right, we're all together, we're all family, right? This person is more favorite than me. No, there is no favoritism here, okay? That, I know this person better, so that's why he's my favorite. But if we recognize that importance, that we are all in this together, we are all united, imagine how, that's what, Paul is writing, that recognizing that God is when we're all together, it's all united, right, as Christians, because we're not of the world. We are in this world, but not of this world. So having that understanding, developing that understanding, you will respond differently, right? To be able to respond gently to someone, right, having that gentleness, we need to recognize that we are family, right? We are closer, right? We got to build that closeness. That's what Paul is writing to Ephesians, right? Build that closeness. He said, bearing one another in love, right? Humility and gentleness with patience, bearing one another love. Yeah, he wants us to be closer, be strong. Once you have that feeling, right? Once you have that feeling of love for each other in your heart, you will respond gently. You have to, but see, that's the thing. This is all learning, part of the learning, right? It's work. You have to produce the fruit. How will you? The plants need water, sunlight, fertilizer and whatnot. So we need to build that love, right? Ultimately, that love that you build among each other will result in the fruit of the gentleness, right? So there is some work involved. So we are students, right? We are students of the word, right? So it's our continuous, it's a constant learning. At what point of your Christian life you can say, oh, I'm done with learning? You can never say that, right? That breeds arrogance, right? You can never say. So we're always on the path of learning, right? Keep that kid alive in your heart, right? You want to teach the kids, right? So we are God's kids in a way, right? So having that childishness, the desire to learn, to wonder at God, like kids wonder, oh, if they see something really cool, they wonder, they are in the awe, right? We got to keep that alive within our own hearts to learn, right? That because even Jesus is claiming, I'm gentle and humble, right? So we got to have that same qualities, having that humbleness and to be able to learn from him, learn from each other, right? And build that love. Okay, so can anybody, I put it's a computer term that I put the next one, right? Does anybody can tell me what that means, I/O? Yeah, it's input output, right? I as an input, O as an output, right? So you have a computer, right? And if you just type randomly stuff in the computer, right? You have a program, and what do you expect? It's like they say garbage in, garbage out, right? In computers, right? You put garbage in, you only get garbage out. So what we input in ourselves, right, determines what output will be coming out of us, right? So let's read Philippians chapter 4, verse 4 to 7. It says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentle spirit be known to all people. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and pleading with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and mind in Christ Jesus. Right? So what are you inputting? Right? What you are doing, right, It says rejoice, right? So what you're doing for yourself, right? It's basically you gotta take care of yourself too. That's the thing. That's the input. You gotta take care of yourself too, before you can respond well to other people, right? So he's saying rejoice, right? Rejoice in the Lord always. He's stressing that. Again, I will say rejoice, right? Then verse 6, do not be anxious of anything, but in everything and by prayer and pleading with thanksgiving, let your requests be made to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and mind in Christ Jesus. So what directs a human body to respond? It's your heart and it's your mind, right? Right? That's pretty much is the source of your response, right? Something your heart says, something your brain thinks, whatever, right? So now here we are saying that Paul is writing, guard your hearts and minds. Through prayer, he is giving prayer as one important source, right? Imagine if you can guard your minds and hearts, right? That's your input, right? You are taking care of yourself. Ryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in those verses 4 through 7, actually, if you're looking at input, verse 8 is probably the critical one. Because verse 8 says,
Yeah.
finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. So that is the proper input
Yeah.
that you're seeking in order for you to be able to guard your heart against the things of the world that aren't that. So you have to be able to have the wherewithal to differentiate between what is good input and what is bad.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Paul here delineates what you should be dwelling on in order for you to have a proper output. And so I think it's critical for us to understand that we just don't guard our hearts and minds, but it's a case that we actually put the right things into there to get the result that God is looking for.
Yeah.
And it leads me to maybe another point of this is this idea that, gentleness is a result of what the input is. And so when I'm dealing with my church family, all of us theoretically should be on this journey, should be in the process of change based on the input that Jesus calls us to put into our minds and hearts. The world doesn't respond in the same fashion. So my blood family, I've got wingnuts in my family. I'm sorry, I got some people in my family that
Everybody.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that I have no expectation of change in those people. Regardless of what I do and how I treat them, their desire to change is not going to be present. But in my brothers and sisters, we all should be striving for that change. And because of that, our gentleness towards one another supports us in that walk and that change that we're all trying to embrace as we take on the character of Christ. The world isn't looking for the character of Christ, but we are.
Yes.
And how we conduct ourselves into the world is a reflection of how we treat each other. And so I think it's important for us to be able to understand that this is a place of change. And this is a place of change because of the love and gentleness we share for one another as we grow, each of us on our journey, to be able to live out what Christ calls us to be.
Yeah, so that's one of my actually favorite verses in the Bible. So the idea is that to basically, guard your minds and hearts, right? And to train up, learn, like, in verse 8, right? Is focus. Anything worthy of praise, think about these things. It says think. So, yeah, take time, right? Take time in your life.
Worry is a form of meditation, because you're sitting there
Yeah.
thinking about the worry, the what if, the what if. So then some Christian comes along and says, give it to God. And then I started saying, you know what we're doing is we're leaving ourselves empty. And a house swept clean, anything can come in. So I believe, yes, give it to God, but then we need to go, what do I need to meditate on? And we need to pull that in,
Yeah.
Jesus, and meditate on the good things, and let God have the worry. But if we don't replace it, another worry comes.
Yeah, so and verse 8 clearly explains very well what you need to focus on, right? And that's what helps. So I want to jump to the next couple of things. Before you can respond, right? So you have to accept certain things and you have to surrender certain things, right? You have to, right? You can't expect, oh, I won't do anything, right? Right? I won't change anything in my life, right? But somehow I want to respond well. That ain't gonna happen. Right? Right? Yeah. So if you're not willing to change, yeah, it's only lead to a disaster. So let's read Colossians chapter 3, verse 12 to 14. It says, so as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing one another and forgiving each other. Whoever has complained against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so you must do also. In addition to all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. So you have to accept certain things. You have to surrender certain things, right? You have to forgive, right? You have to, you have, there is some work involved. It says put on a heart of compassion. Yeah, you have to, even though sometimes you say, no, I can't do this, and I can't do this, it's too difficult for me. But we have to go a step beyond that, right? We have to. That is what distinguishes us, right, as Christians from anything else, right? Means that is forgiveness, right? In all addition to put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Yeah, we have to go a step beyond, right? We have to accept certain things that we have to and surrender certain things. We have to. So imagine, if you take those two words, right? You have to accept certain things and you have to surrender certain things. What do you think? What falls in those categories? What you can accept or what you can surrender, right? That might help for you to respond well.
Surrender self a lot. To accept that not everybody's going to see things from your point of view. So, accept that everybody's different, you have to surrender yourself, need to react.
Yeah. So there is some. I want to quickly jump to the final thing, is the cost, right? Is gentleness free?
Is gentleness free?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't cost you anything to be gentle.
Actually, it will cost you something. So let's read those verses. 1 Peter chapter 3. Verse 13 to 17, quickly. And who is there to harm you if you prove zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed. And do not fear their intimidation, and do not be in dread. Is this the right one? 1 Peter 13 to 17.